Welcome to the Fat Fueled Family Podcast, where every week Danny and Maura Vega discuss topics that help families live a healthy and active lifestyle with their little ones, including nutrition and training, peaceful parenting, education, and mindset. To stay up to date, make sure to hit subscribe on this podcast and check out the blog at www.fatfueled.family. You can also find them on Facebook and Instagram at dannyvega.ms, at fatfueledmom, and at fatfueledkids, and Fat Fueled Family on YouTube. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the Fat Fueled Family Podcast. I'm your host, Danny, and I'm joined by my gorgeous, gorgeous wife, Maura.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you today?
I'm good, my love. I'm good. You look great. You feel great. You're doing it.
Thank you.
In so many ways. You're crushing it.
Crushing.
You're crushing. You're totally crushing.
Totally crushing.
We're both crushing.
So this was, you guys are in for a real treat. So if you're in your car, put your seatbelt on. If you're a lady, I hope you put waterproof mascara because I was pretty much crying during the entire.
You'll see it on the YouTube.
You'll see it on the YouTube. Go make fun of me and my crying face. But wow, what an incredible person. What an incredible story. We're super excited about this one.
Yeah, so engaging the minute he started talking and pulling us right in to what he was saying. And yeah, we were both engrossed. It was one of those like, man, I didn't expect that because he's a financial advisor. And, we're thinking about some of the things that, being prepared. We knew a little bit about his story. But yeah, why don't you tell us all about him?
Our guest today is Matt Newman. Matthew S. Newman has been in the financial services industry since 1997. Matt thinks that the job of the financial advisor is to be there when things are bad, to give families good news during the deepest and darkest of times, and to have a true plan in place prior to the bad. Matt was diagnosed with grade 3 brain cancer at 39 years old. His father-in-law, Larry, was fighting pancreatic cancer at the time. He had 3 children under 5, and his life changed instantly. Knowing all his basic planning was done allowed him to take on the battle at hand and avoid regret and resentment. Lying in a hospital bed prior to brain surgery, he realized every speech he had ever given on the need for planning in advance of the bad was actually about him. Matt's catharsis became writing. He started seeing life through a new set of lenses and began sharing his new understanding of the realness and fragility of life, his change in perspective, and the value of living in the moment and appreciating the now. These were gifts he had taken from cancer and would never give back. This was his journey. He owned it. Cancer was just along for the ride. This led him writing his memoir, Starting at the Finish Line, which chronicles the journey that he and his entire family took together, which got him to a place of clarity, understanding, and appreciation. The book's underlying message really exemplifies the necessity of why it's important to get your financial planning in order. It is both inspirational and actionable. Starting at the Finish Line became the bestseller in a variety of categories on Amazon. It was named the top 2019 unlimited Kindle biography memoir by Book Riot and the second best brain cancer book ever written by Book Authority, and many more. He did a podcast with ESPN, has done 3 TEDx talks, and travels all over the country as a keynote speaker, sharing his story and inspiring audiences on the necessity of planning and the appreciation of life. He also speaks to sales teams, organizations, financial advisors, and more on main stages and webinars on ways to connect deeper with clients and prospects through realness and purity. This will drive revenue and referrals. His dedication to being a top performer at everything he does has led him to become number 1 in sales at his profession for over 20 years while also fighting cancer. What drives him and his family, his wife Rebecca, and his 3 children, Luke, Jake, and Lola, his passions are fitness, sports, and raising money for charities to beat brain cancer. Matt is an ambassador for Head for the Cure. This is a really exciting episode, you guys. I really hope you enjoy it.
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to take a quick minute to talk about our sponsor, Keto Brick. As you guys know, I have been around since the very beginning when it was just an idea, when Robert was getting ready for the show that took him pro,
and he needed something to help him hit his macros. And I've seen it grow into the company it is today. Just so proud of my friend, and I'm so proud of the company he's built, the people he's been able to help, as he has several people who work for them. And so he's actually helping people make a living doing this now, which is just unbelievable and so inspirational to me. If you don't know what keto bricks are, they are shelf-stable fat bombs, for lack of a better term. They are 1,000 calorie bricks, and they have great ingredients. They have ketogenic macros, usually like 88 to 90 grams of fat with 30 grams of protein. And then the carbs are anywhere from 9 to 14. Super low carb, super keto friendly, and you can do all types of cool stuff with them. I tell everybody my favorite is keto brick cereal. I chop it up into little chunks and serve it with a bowl of cereal with almond milk or goat milk, which is my favorite. They have several flavors. They now have vegan and whey options. So they have the whey protein peanut butter as well as the old school pea protein peanut butter, which either one of them is easily in my top two. I go back and forth between those and the toasted almond coconut. So definitely go to www.ketobrick.com, get yourself some bricks, and use Vega for a chance to win a whole month supply of bricks.
Welcome, Matt. How's it going?
It's going great. And thank you guys so much for having me today. I really appreciate it and been looking forward to this.
Oh, we have too, man.
Totally awesome. We're so excited to get into all the things with you today. So we always lead off with the question, what is the most critical problem you are currently trying to solve?
It's funny. My first instinct when you say that to me is to talk about some of the personal things we talk about. We all have this impression that life is rainbows and unicorns, and we see these amazing people and they have this facade in front of them. We've all got our battles. We've all got our scars. We've all got the wars that we've taken on. But that's not what wants to come out of me right now. I think one of the biggest issues that I want to solve is changing a portion of the U.S. education system.
Ooh, wow. I like
we focus on educating our children to enter the real world. They go through grammar school. They go on to middle or junior high school. Some after high school start their careers. They start their craft. They start their passions. Many go to college. Then some siphon down. They go to grad school, maybe medical school, law school. But eventually they're going to come out in the real world. And we teach them subjects like social studies and biology and all these other things. We teach them nothing about finance.
Nothing.
We prepare them for the real world, but we don't tell them how to pick an employee benefit. We don't tell them how to prepare as their family gets bigger, as they encounter more responsibility, to have some type of planning in place. And when I use the term financial planning, people think it's about investing. It's not. Financial planning is mostly legal documentation. Do we teach children what a will is when they're in high school? What a power of attorney is? Right. When they get a job, how they can pick their benefits, maybe what a 401k is. When they start to amass assets, find a financial advisor, find a professional, find someone who's going to work with you. But the reality is life is a lot more fragile than we think it is. And to put regret, resentment, and negativity on our shoulders because we didn't do the proper planning in advance is something that the U.S. education system absolutely has to fix. Otherwise, we're not truly preparing our children to go into the real world.
I 100% agree with you there. I am one of those people that feels so gypped out of that and like stressed about it too, because it's not natural for me. Where I think for some people, they naturally gravitate and they like this kind of stuff, like my mother, right? Like she's so good at this. She's just naturally, yes, your mom too. Like they naturally just balance their checkbook all the time. And they know how to, like she does mortgages and she knows about she asked me the other day about my homestead exemption and I'm like, what? You know what I mean? And it's so funny that you say that because you would think like government schools, I mean, even when it comes to just filing taxes, something that's simple every single year, it stresses me out because I'm like, I don't know the first thing, right? Like I just got to hire people out to do this stuff for me at this point. But it would be so useful if there was some type of course that would, because this is the true real life stuff here that we need to prepare
think about
for.
the point you just said there. Some people adapt to it. I know for me, I grew up in northern Jersey, right outside New York City.
I knew the minute you started talking, I knew you were from Jersey. That's so crazy.
By the way, we're all from Jersey in some fashion, in some way.
I lived in the middle of Jersey. I would probably be considered, I wouldn't say I'd be considered South. I lived in Hightstown, it's by New Brunswick. So kind of.
Which town?
Hightstown.
I know exactly, right off exit
Exit
8
8.
off
8A.
the turnpike right there.
Yeah,
Know
yeah.
that well.
Yep.
So it's interesting though. So where I grew up though, I grew up in the house. My father was a financial advisor. My mother was a teacher. Those are two completely separate occupations. But what you learn later in life is that your parents are planting these seeds in you, seeds of knowledge that may bloom at some point and you'll understand them more. They made no sense when you're a young kid learning about planning and your mom trying to get you to write and, education and all that. In fact, you find it unbelievably annoying. But those are the things we take with us later on, that if we utilize what was gifted to us at a young age, it could change the perspective that we have in life. I was very fortunate to learn the basics of financial planning growing up, which I had no idea would become my craft, my passion, and would actually change my life later on.
So that's so cool. And you mentioned so many things. Like you mentioned something that I harp on all the time, maybe not for the same reason, but it's in the same area. The fact that we are so sterilized and we're just generally safer than we have been in all of history. And because of that, people think that they're going to live forever. And people don't know if I tell someone what is probate court, they don't even know what that is. That's where your money goes if you don't have a will and if you don't have everything, and then the government takes it, and it happens with land, it happens with money, all the assets, and all of those things are just so important. I did want to put something in your ear because we're entrepreneurs. I'm sure you're an entrepreneur as well. And, we totally, I value your mission. I think that's fantastic because I know we have masses, however many, 90 million children, however many children there are in this country. And, but we're homeschoolers. And so I'm going to put it in your ear that I think you should make a course for parents.
Ooh, that would be fun.
Because, I think that, you spoke about it yourself, your parents taught you these things. Like my parents, we were in bankruptcy when I was 10. My dad was an addict. We rented, we did a lot of things that, those were my examples. And then when we started, not only did we start in debt, I also took student loans, all those things I'm learning from, so my kids never do it. But also you mentioned, when you move into another tax bracket, or even if you just forget about tax brackets, even just making more money, just the ability to have that foresight of like, okay, I don't have to adjust my cost of living. It doesn't mean because I have more money that I need to spend it and all those things.
What's the wisest way?
Yeah. So we went ultra conservative with it, and we did financial peace. And that's how we paid everything off. We put 60 grand down on our house, and the house is here. You'll laugh, but our house, we bought it for how much? 314.
That was with all the design, yeah.
With all the design that we built. I mean, that house in Miami or in North Jersey, forget about it. Like Bergen County, something like that would be like $1 million house. Yeah. So yeah, man, so have you thought about that at all, by the way? Like, making a course for like parents for kids?
It's funny. I actually brought this up. I did a TED Talk on this. And it was one of the topics that I spoke about, that, you learn these lessons at the deepest and darkest of times. You're given these new set of lenses you see life through. You understand things. But unfortunately, when you have regret, resentment, negativity piled up on your shoulders because you're making that statement of, I shoulda, coulda, woulda, means all you're doing is digging a hole deeper for yourself and not giving yourself the ability to fight because you don't have that extra weight on top of you. But what I also think, you just brought up something interesting there, talking about money and conceptual ways to alleviate debt and whatnot. It's funny how when I talk about the basics of planning, everything I basically brought up, you could do on like LegalZoom for like $19. Yeah. And that's the conversation I have with people. I go, North Jersey, right? Tony Soprano is? Yeah, go read how much money they lost because there were not 3 signatures when he passed away on his estate planning. A power of attorney, what is that? God forbid I become incapacitated. I am dictating who will be able to handle our estate. And when we say estate, that doesn't mean wealth. That's actually a terminology that you utilize. Who will be able to handle that? God forbid something happens to me and my wife. Who will be the one taking care of my children? We get to make that choice. If you don't do that, that gets done for you. And unfortunately, your legacy is defined when you're no longer here and the memories that you leave for others. So if you dig a hole for people, we've all seen those people who They're married, life's going great. They've been married for 40, 50 years. Everything's going good. They have that fake facade, as I say again, as they're keeping up with the Joneses and everything is going spectacular. And then all of a sudden the husband dies and the wife loses her home. She loses her kids can't go to college. It's about the basics of planning. And let me give you a point on this. Most people want life insurance when they can't get it. Most people want long-term care when they're driving someone to a home.
Right.
Most people want a financial plan after they lose 30%. The job is to have a plan in place prior to the negative.
Yep.
Let's liken it to football for all your listeners. What does a football team do the entire week leading up to a game? They
Study,
execute
film,
and
prepare.
practice the what?
The plan.
The game plan.
Yeah.
That's it. Could you imagine one day a coach was like, screw it. Let's just show up on Sunday. We'll just have cocktails all week. The spread on that game would be like 87,000 points or something like that. The reason that I share that is the basics of this is we get caught up in this minutia of, should I buy that stock, this stock? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about that when you can be in a terrible situation, but know that this is taken care of, that's taken care of, that. What's next? What do I got to do? What do I got to take care of? What fight do I need to establish here that I show I can give everything I have in me because I don't have all this negativity and resentment and regret in my mind. And if we're able to facilitate that in the education system, we're preparing people for better to understand that at some point in their lives, as I went through, we're not all Teflon. We're not all bulletproof. We could sit there and be in the gym all day long and work out. And we learn that strength is not how big your arms are. Strength is not how much you bench press. Strength is something we could find deep down at these negative, deep-rooted, evil times. And we could find it, grab it, own it, and we can make it ours. But if you have all this, I wish I would have done this, this, and this, and then your family looks at you differently, then you didn't take the responsibility to make sure that you had a plan in place to protect them at negative times.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about resilience, and the other thing too is we tell our kids, and it's all about the framing, because you're talking about poor framing will have you living in the past. It's that regret, is that and we always say, like, winners don't lose, they learn.
Right.
We always, that this is good. We learned this is something really good. Like, now we're prepared. Hopefully it's not, something where you want to be as mindful of everything as possible, but hopefully if you do slip up, that's why I tell them, our son, 2 years old, was his first financial lesson. We went to Disney World, and he, exit through the gift shop, and he was crying, and we sat with him. How long did we sit with him on that bench? At least 30 minutes.
It probably felt longer than what it really is.
Felt like an hour.
Because when
but
they're
it felt
crying, it always feels like it's forever.
But it was maybe
20
like
minutes.
20 minutes or so.
Maybe
But
20
like we
minutes
were
is
like,
not
you
too
know
bad.
what? We don't want this to happen again. So we're going to give you opportunities to like make money.
And to earn your money.
Over like 6 months, he made like 25, 30 bucks doing things. And you should have seen his face when he bought his first.
Oh, they're so proud. You don't want to deny them of that. Like, if you just give them everything.
Yeah. And he started his first company at 6. It was called Galaxy Dream Catchers, which I told him, you got to keep that. You got to incorporate and just keep that name, even though it originally was, the concept was the company, the Dream Catchers, because we were taking him to the YMCA for soccer. He was getting the sticks, painting them. We bought him the feathers and a few of the trinkets on Amazon, but he sold Dream Catchers and he made like $300, and he bought himself his bearded dragon and all that stuff. So we are trying to instill all those things into them. And I definitely want to come back to this. And I also want to, maybe offline when we get off, I just want to know for personal, because we have term life, and we got that when I was like young, like 27. But there's a new life insurance that I'm not saying I'm curious about it for myself, but if someone were to ask me, I'd want to know, like, hey, this is a scam or this is not a scam.
And I'll tell you this too, and I have no problem sharing this with your audience as well. Everybody is different. There's no cookie cutter component to anything. And as someone in the finance industry, I don't like that. Here's what we do the most of. No, you need to learn about the person. You need to learn about their desires, their dreams, their aspirations, their hopes in life, what their goals are, what they want to leave. There's different ways to utilize that, and every person should have a different plan in place that correlates directly to what they want. So I'm more than happy to go over that with you, but that's the most important thing, is that if a plan is not made for you based off your goals in life, then it's not real.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like we all have our personal biases, whether it because we're financially motivated, like let's say there's a certain product that we're supposed to push, and I get that, or maybe there's a product that we want to push because we think it's in their best interest. But like you said, you got to ask those questions because maybe you're missing something.
And those questions should be asked to the person as well too.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So I'm I'm going to take this sideways just for a second because personally, I'm curious, and because this is the Fat Fueled family, I wanted to take a second. When you had your astrocytoma, beyond like the standard of care, did you learn anything with respect in the counseling or just on your own with respect to like lifestyle and diet? Because was there any mention of the role of sugar, for example? Because that's something that we tell people all the time. The metabolism of cancer cells like depends on sugar. So I'm just curious about that.
Sure. So I'll share something with you. So when I graduated from the University of Delaware in 1996, and there's a rationale of why I'm going to share this with you. And it's funny. It's the Fighting Blue Hens. I'll never forget. I'm wearing this beautiful blue cap and gown. Maya Angelou just gave this gorgeous commencement speech.
Wow.
My mother and father come walking onto the football field where we are, and my dad gives me that look of, "Hey, pal, not bad." I'm like, "Dude, king has arrived, man. College graduate right here." He's like, "What do you want to do?" And I'm like, "Well, that's easy, Dad. I'm going to join your firm. I want to be a financial advisor." Those seeds were starting to bloom. I was starting to understand things better as I was an adult. And I'm going to clean the language up for your listeners here, but my old man's from the Bronx. And my dad gives me this look and he goes, "There's no bleeping way you're joining my firm." And every single picture of me at graduation's like this. Jerk off. Who's this guy? What he was giving me is one of the greatest lessons in life. There's no free lunches.
There's no free
Go out and earn it. Find out if it's your craft, if it's your passion, it's something you take to. You don't want it to be a job. You want it to be a lifestyle. And if it's something that you love, we'll talk in a few years. So I became something that's called a wholesaler. And what a wholesaler is we get the same licenses as financial advisors. And what will happen is we'll work for a company that manufactures a 401k, an annuity, a mutual fund, whatever it may be. And we'd go sit with clients and advisors and show them why they should use our products. Now, I remember my dad sitting with me, and right before I started, and he goes, 3 pieces of advice I want to give you. I go, "Yeah, Dad, what's that?" He goes, 1, if you don't believe in the product or a family member wouldn't own it, don't sell it. Right. Lose the battle to win the war. It's about having belief in what you're doing. I'm like, "Yeah, Dad." He goes, "Number 2, always be honest. At some point, if you're not, it will come back to haunt you. Don't put yourself in that position and put your head on a pillow at night." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Number 3, you got a soccer scholarship to college. Use that work ethic. Combine those the other 2 things, there's no ceiling on what you can do." And I took off. And I started to preach the things that I learned. The job of the financial advisor is to be there when things are bad, to have a plan in place prior to the negative, to make sure everything was taken care of in advance so people could fight with independence and dignity when they truly need it the most, to get good news at the deepest and darkest of times. And I would say it, I would say it, and I would plan, and I would show my conviction and my belief. 3 years later, I was the number 1 guy at my company. Within 4 to 5 years, I was the number 1 guy in our industry. And I remember my father sitting down with me, and he's like, "Not bad, right, man?" I'm like, "Dude." He goes, "I think we should talk about you joining my firm." I go, "You can't afford me, man. That ain't gonna happen."
That's right. That's
I found my craft. I found my passion. It was my way of sharing these seeds that bloomed that I started to understand of all I was taught as a young child, but just transposing them in a different perspective. And business kept moving. And I met my future wife in 2004. I'm a Giants fan who was living in Philadelphia. I will tell you, the day I moved down to Philly did not go well as the opposite sports fan right there. But I moved to an area called Old City. Cobblestone streets, the Liberty Bell, the National Constitution Center. It was an ambiance that was infectious. Young people my age going to law school, medical school, starting their careers. I might have been the guy from North Jersey. I knew Philly was home that day. And
yeah, Philly's cool.
I still live in the Philadelphia area, and we're talking 25, 26 years later. So I met my future wife, Rebecca. I grew up a dad advisor, mom teacher, Northern Jersey, right outside New York City. My future wife at that point grew up in a very different area. She grew up in mining country, Pennsylvania. I was Jewish. She was Catholic. Her dad was a highway construction worker. Her mom was a janitor. She grew up in a 500 square foot row home. Wow. As we were talking before about college, my wife went to Temple. And the reason she went to Temple is because it's an in-state school. She worked full time Nobody gave her a penny. She paid her entire way. We grew up in these two completely
Wow.
different
Wow.
environments. And I heard all this negativity about in-laws and all this new stuff. My father-in-law liked to hunt. He liked to fish. He liked to fix things. He liked to grow vegetables. I did none of that. But we both liked to watch baseball and drink a beer, and I was determined to turn him into a Yankees fan over time. And we built this amazing relationship. And in 2006, we got married. I will let you guys do the math. About 9 months later, our first child was going to be born. So we did what most families do. You move out of the city and you move to the suburbs.
Right.
And I moved to a beautiful area called Washington Crossing, Pennsylvania. We live literally right on the Delaware where Washington crossed. I mean, it's horse farms.
Oh, that's
It's
awesome.
covered
Gorgeous.
bridges. But you're in New York in 45, 50 minutes, and you're in Philly in 30 minutes. It's the best of
Wow.
both worlds, and we couldn't have been happier. And right before my first child was born, I remember my dad sitting down with me and going, what do you say every day to your clients? Our job is to be there when things are bad. Our job is to have a plan in place prior to the negative. Our job is to give people good news at the deepest and darkest of times. Because you practice everything you preach? I go, yeah. He goes, you do your will? I go, well, Dad, I'll get to that. Did you power of attorney? Oh, yeah, I'll do that. Did you do all your life insurance planning? I'm like, Dad, just did the Tough Mudder the other day. He goes, so you don't practice everything you preach.
Wow.
I went, okay. And over the next 2 weeks, I took care of that. I was taking on more responsibility. I was about to be a father, homeowner, all these other things. I had an obligation to my family to make sure that I was moving upwards as our family was moving upwards as
Yes.
well too. That the scales weren't going one way or the other and that they were staying balanced. And that's something nobody teaches you in the past. If this isn't my craft, if this isn't my career, if this isn't the way that I've been raised, how would I know about this? 16 months later, my second son. So my first son was born in 2007, Luke. My second son, Jake, 2009. And in 2010, my wife's pregnant with our third child. We're about to have 3 kids in 37 months.
Wow.
We don't sleep much. And
No,
as this
no.
is all going on, my father-in-law, unfortunately, gets diagnosed with pancreatic cancer at 60 years old.
Wow.
Wow.
My first experience with cancer happened when I was 15. My grandma Harriet was diagnosed with cancer. I wasn't old enough to understand it, digest it, or really understand the ramifications or realness of what came with it. I remember one day she was Grandma Harriet, the next day she was wearing a cancer turban, and the next day she was gone.
Yeah.
What I do remember is what it did to my mother. My mother spoke to my grandmother every single day. Every weekend, we were at their house in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. They're at our house in Parsippany, New Jersey. And I watched my mom become a different person. I watched her not stop crying. And I wish I understood it more. I was 15. I didn't get it. I wish I could have hugged her more. I wish I could have been there. She became different. She all of a sudden, she couldn't handle the ramification of what was happening. She still to this day is never going to be over it. They were like 2 peas in a pod. My wife and my father-in-law were the exact same. My wife is pregnant with her third child, got 2 kids under 3 years old. She's got a husband, and she made it her full-time job to do whatever the hell she needed to do to make sure she took care of him. She would take him down to the University of Pennsylvania, which is about 45 minutes from us. And she would take him down there for his Whipple procedure. Then she would take him for chemo and radiation. She would take care of the kids. And what I saw was inspirational. I saw what a warrior is. They never bitched. They never complained. You did what you needed to do for family to be there to truly show real support. I remember my father-in-law sitting down with me. And the reality is you got pancreatic cancer, you got about a 6-month window.
Yeah, so
you don't
brutal.
feel the ramifications of it till it's already spread for the most part.
Mhm.
I remember my father-in-law saying to me he had 2 goals. One was to see all his grandkids born, and the other was for them to all be old enough to have real memories of him. I couldn't have been prouder to be part of this. What I watched was inspirational and motivational. Them 2 together was a fight that you really can't dictate. There's no vernacular that explains what real passion, love, and fight is all about. And unfortunately, cancer is like a roller coaster. It goes up, down, left. Doesn't care about you, doesn't care about your
Right.
emotions, doesn't care what your plans are. It does what it wants, when it wants. And 2.5 years later, 2013, I'm driving on a icy, snowy, crappy day in a town called Bridgewater, New Jersey. I'm wearing my suit and tie, heading up to go see clients, and I'm seeing just fender benders all over the road. I'm like, not today, man. I don't feel like dealing with this. I'm doing 25 miles per hour. Not into it. I pull up to a traffic light, and as I hit the brakes, my car hydroplanes right into the car in front of it, flips over into the median. I'm holding on to that steering wheel. The airbag pops, and I'm like, all that working out I do, that is for this moment right now. Car flips over. I get out without a scratch on my body.
Wow.
Police come over. They're like, dude, you got to go to the hospital right now. I'm like, no, man, beast mode. I'm okay. I call my wife, who's shopping in a place called the King of Prussia Mall, which is one of the biggest malls in the country, and taking a little break from Larry's roller coaster going up and down. And that's my father-in-law, Larry. And I tell her what happened. She goes, you got to go to the hospital. I'm like, no, I'm okay. And she reminded me about our friend Karen Mancini. Our friend Karen's driving one day in a town called Bluebell, Pennsylvania. She's sitting at a traffic light, and a car comes flying through the light and T-bones her. She's okay. But the police say you should go to the hospital and get checked out. So she goes there, and a couple hours later, the surgeons walk in, and they go, we want you to send flowers and a thank you note to the person that hit you. We just found a brain aneurysm. You'd be dead probably in the next 3 to 4 hours.
Wow.
Thought about my wife.
No freaking way, man.
Thought about my kids. I'm like a type A personality. I jumped in a tow truck. We brought my car back, and I went on my way. I came home that night, and my head is killing me. I mean, just killing me. I got my father-in-law going through chemotherapy, sitting on the couch, and my wife, Rebecca, suffers from something called chronic migraines. So I'm sitting there going like, oh, my head. I got 3 kids under 4 years old running around. She looks at me, she goes, should you go to the hospital? I'm like, no. She goes, try getting chronic migraines. Don't want to hear about it. Over the next 2 weeks, the pain got more and more severe every single day. But it wasn't about me. It was about Larry. It was about my family. I was the furthest thing that mattered at this point. 2 weeks into it, I was giving a speech in that same town of Bridgewater, New Jersey. And in finance, I speak all over the place. That's easy. You want me to talk about squirrels for 45 minutes? No worries. I'll knock that thing out. And I'm giving this presentation. And as I go to make a point, I felt a hot flash hit me in the face. And after that hot flash hit me in the face, slur and gurgle poured out of my mouth. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what was going on, but I remember seeing myself standing outside my body going, you're having a stroke. You are having a stroke right now. Felt like an eternity. Turns out it was about 5 to 7 seconds. Wow. I got myself together. I'm like, oh, I got sinus infection, not sleeping. Let's bounce back into this. So now I'm having this massive, I lost all ability to sleep. And now I start having these strokes. Over the next, call it 6 to 8 weeks, I had 9 more of them. One when I was training for the Broad Street Run, the largest 10-mile run in the country in Philadelphia. One when I was driving, one when I was talking to somebody. Once it hit 10, I'm going, there's something wrong. Something's bad. And then it's May 14th, 2013. I'm giving a speech in my hometown of Parsippany, New Jersey. I know everybody in the room. They're all clients of mine, known them forever. Everything's going great. Got a packed room. And I go to make a point, and for the 11th time, I feel a hot in the face. I turn my back on everybody to point to a PowerPoint to avoid that 5 to 7 seconds of them seeing my face at that point right there. That was the moment I decided I'm going to the hospital right now. I'm done. I finished my presentation, and about 30 hands go up. You give a presentation and 30 hands go up means people are ingrained in what you're saying. They're listening. They want more information. They're buying in. And everybody remembers my head dropped. I answered one question and said, listen, I'm running late. I'm so sorry. I got to go. All these wonderful people coming. Matt, I got one more question. That's a great point. And this is going through my mind. If you don't get away from me, someone's getting put on the ground right now. That is not me in any way whatsoever.
Yeah.
A couple of people follow me to the parking lot. One more question, Matt. It's a great point. I peel out of the parking lot. That's not me. I don't do that. I called my wife, who again was at the King of Prussia Mall, taking a little break from Larry's chemotherapy. I tell her what's going on, and we said we're going to meet at a place called Capitol Health in Hopewell, New Jersey. It's about a 90-minute ride. And this is going through my head. All right, cool. This is good. They're going to fix it. They're going to diagnose it. They'll figure out what's wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to die. I don't know. I meet my wife in the parking lot. We hold hands and we walk. And they go, Mr. Newman, you got to get a CAT scan. I'm like, CAT scan? Cool. It's like an x-ray. No big deal. We're going to knock that thing out. They give me a CAT scan. And 3 hours later, they walk in. We go, we think we know the problem. I'm like, yes, let's diagnose it, fix it. What's the deal? Enough already. It's been going on for months. They go, Mr. Newman, you have a lesion on the left frontal lobe of your brain. Wow. Now, just to make a quick
Frontal lobe, man. That's primary.
That's primary.
That's true. But let me throw this out to you. And this is one of the mistakes we make. I could say globally for the most part. When you speak the vernacular of your craft, the person who's not in your craft does not know what you're talking about.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
To me, a lesion's like a cut or a bruise. That's also, I was like, oh, car accident. I probably ding my head and don't remember it. It's like when my mechanic talks to me. I buy my mechanic. And he's telling, and this is going through my mind as he talks, dude, how much does it cost and when could
Right.
I pick it up? You can stop right now. I mean, I
Yeah,
have no
don't
idea
care.
what you're talking
Yeah.
about right there. So what happens is they go, you got to get an MRI, MRA, blah, blah, blah. So I go in and out of the MRI tube 4 or 5 times. They tell me at 3 o'clock in the morning, I got to do one more because I have to have contrast put in it so they can get a better view. Rebecca says, I'm going to go home. I'm going to make lunch for the kids that are 5, 3, and 2. I'm going to find a ride for my father for his chemotherapy. I'll be back in like an hour. I'm like, take your time. I'm going to be in there an hour anyway. And the nurse walks in with the wheelchair, goes, all right, Mr. Newman, MRI, MRA. Now we got to do a contrast. I'm like, I'm done with the wheelchair. I can walk down. I don't need that. She goes, Mr. Newman, liability. You got to get in there. So I get in the wheelchair. She grabs the clipboard off the back. She goes, all right, Mr. Newman, MRI, MRA. Now we got to do a contrast. We need to see how big your brain tumor is. I said, it's a lead. And that was the moment at 39 I was diagnosed.
Wow.
And they brought me back to the tube. My head just started spinning all over the place. And they brought me back after that tube, and they plugged me into about 30 different machines into a hospital. And a hospital bed, I should say. I just started to cry. I started to have retrospective on my life. I started to think there must be something I did that caused this. I'm a good dad. I'm a good husband. And I mentioned this earlier, but strength is something that we find is not what we really believe that it is. Strength is something when you find it, you grab it, you own it, it's yours. And I didn't know I had it in me. I saw it, I took it, and I just started cursing my brains. And the nurses come running in and tell the story to this day, and they go, oh my God, are you okay? And I was like, I'm fine. That was my pity party. If I'm going down swinging. And about an hour later, my wife walks in with the surgeon, wiping her eyes. Dad's got pancreatic cancer. To the average person, he's going to die. Her husband's got brain cancer. To the average person, he's going to die. And she's wiping her eyes, and the surgeon looks at me and goes, it's Wednesday. Sunday, we're going to do a full craniotomy. We're going to cut half your head off. We're going to take the jaw out. We're going to take your tumor out, and we won't know the severity of it for 10 days. He goes, let me tell you what else we're going to do. I go, let me tell you what you're going to do. You're going to get the crap out of my head. I'll take care of the rest. I ain't going anywhere on my kids. He goes, don't move. And he brings me a study from the American Medical Association. There's some diseases that will take us physically. There's nothing we could do about it, but they will never take us spiritually. And the legacy that we leave, if we allow the disease, the negativity, the issue that we've been through to be what we're remembered for, that's on us. That's on our shoulders. We control our legacy to other people. And he brings me this study about the opportunity to win, about beating disease, survival, that was done by the American Medical Association. And what it talks about is something called the downward spiral. And many of us have heard the story of the married couple. They're married for 50 years. Wife's healthy as a horse. Husband gets cancer, he dies. What do we often hear happens 6 months later?
She dies.
Yeah.
Dies. That's exactly
She
right.
dies.
Once you fall into that spiral of negativity, of regret, it destroys you. The number one most important thing, if you have a chance to win, is attitude. And all this did is pour kerosene on my fire. And I remember my wife looking at me. She goes, our parents are on the way. First off, her dad's not on the way. My cancer partner's on the way. He was there to show me how to act. I stopped believing in irony at that given moment. He showed me how to fight with independence, how to have dignity. This happened for a reason. This is not an accident. And I said, do me a favor, hon, give me the iPad. He goes, yeah, do you want to watch a movie or something? I'm like, just give me the iPad. Wednesday, I'll be operated on Friday. You know what the first thing I pulled up on that iPad was? My will. Box. Next thing I pulled up was my power of attorney. Box. Then pulled up my life insurance. Pulled up my mortgage. Pulled up all the basics. Closed my iPad. And it's at that given moment I realized every speed. I just didn't know that all my plans. So Larry and my mother-in-law walk in, says nothing to me, nods his head at me. I nod my head at him. We didn't need to talk. The connection was there. It was real. It was pure. It was honest. We both got it.
Wow.
My mom and dad walk in. My dad gives me the same look he gave me at the University of Delaware. How you doing, buddy? But I saw it in his eyes. I saw the fear. I saw the anger. I saw your son has brain cancer. He's going to die. And I said, Dad, come here. Come sit on the bed with me. I pulled out the iPad, and I showed him everything. I took the iPad, and I threw it on the edge of the bed. I said, Dad, there's only one thing on my mind. What's that? I go, beating this. This thing ain't going to take me. All the planning is done. The only thing I'm going to do is fight like a son of a bitch because I got nothing to lose in my faith. They might grieve if I'm not here, but I know this. They will never, ever have a legacy of me that wasn't here to take care of them. If I'm going down swinging. And you do whatever you want with this. But for the first time in my life, I saw my dad break down and cry. I didn't. I wasn't in cry mode. And he looks at me and goes, you're going to beat this. I go, I know I'm going to beat this. And he goes, these are the stories you're going to share. This is the way you're going to connect with people. You're going to allow them to have a better understanding of how you can find this energy. And that Friday, I had that full craniotomy. I know you guys talk a lot about fitness, which I'm very into as well too. Health and wealth are directly correlated.
Yeah.
Anybody who
Wow.
doesn't think that, they are wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me make my point on this.
This is
I go through massive brain surgery. I have staples all over my head, all this other stuff. They bring me to the ICU. That was on Friday. I went home on Sunday.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
Think of the
That's
cost of
that's
being
wild.
in the hospital per
Yeah.
night.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I 100% believe it is directly correlated with fitness and eating healthy. There is no
Absolutely.
doubt in my mind about that because I had to do physical tests. I did them from the ICU on Saturday and they wouldn't let me leave. I wanted to go home. I wanted to be with my family. I didn't want to be here any longer. I didn't know the time frame. I wouldn't know the severity of the tumor for 10 days. So what happens is they let me go home that Sunday. They bring me out in a wheelchair to the front. My wife, Rebecca, picks me up in the same car I dropped off 6 days earlier. I have a second head. I look like a train wreck. And she brings me home. And we have one of those side entrances by our. And we all hear the term, home is where the heart is. And I walk in. I got 3 little kids holding signs going, I love you, Daddy. Thank you for coming home. I started crying. But I didn't cry out of fear. I cried out of happiness. It's not about tomorrow. It's not about yesterday. It's about this moment right now. And I own this moment. And all the stuff we get caught up in, the negativity, what happened in the past, we're giving up what we own. Time is our asset. We don't have to share that with anyone. And this was my moment. I was crying out of happiness. I went upstairs. I fell asleep for 13 hours. This was my room. This was my bed. This is where I wanted to be. And again, like I told you, I would know the severity of how bad the tumor was in 10 days. And over the next few days, I started to write. I started to send these messages out to friends and family, just emails on my new perspective on life, about living in the now, about having this new gift of lenses I was seeing life through. Cancer was giving me something here that I was never going to give back. I could tell you that I wrote from it. I never read one after I sent it. It was almost like catharsis. It's we push all this negativity deep down into our bellies. We all do. I don't care what you're dealing with. None of us have this life of perfection. The question is, can you find an outlet to get rid of it? And if you remember at the beginning of our conversation, I said, you get these seeds planted in you at a young age from your parents.
Mhm.
Well, the seeds my mom planted in me started to bloom, who was a teacher and who liked reading and writing. And I started to write. It became my catharsis. So on day 5, my son Luke is 5 years old. He's having his 5-year-old father-son picnic at school. You sit in the backyard for 30 minutes. You have a little brown bag lunch, and you leave. And my wife looks at me that this. You look like a train wreck. I'm like, I would never miss this. Not in a million.
I'm going.
So that morning, we take my 3 kids to school. I have to ride shotgun. I'm not allowed to drive. My wife takes Jake and Luke to their class. I take my 2-year-old Lola. I hold her little hand. I walk her to her classroom. She goes, I love you, Daddy. Thank you for taking me to class. I think, why do I do this for? Because every time I usually do this, you know what I'm doing? All right, where's my next appointment? Where am I going on that?
Yes.
I was actually teaching her lessons to not make it about the person you're with. It was about her. This was her moment. This was her and her dad. I can't leave a phone in the car to let her know to focus on the person that you're with. I have to let her know that it's about me and it's about business and about this, and time flies so quickly. I am getting a clarity. Cancer is giving me a gift. This
Wow.
way of seeing life differently is something that I will never give back. I will own it. It's mine. And my wife looks at me around 11:30 and goes, do not go to the lunch. I'm like, never miss it. So she takes me up to the lunch. Luke's waiting at the front door for me and gives me a big hug and goes, I love you, Daddy. Thank you for being here. And I am rainbows and unicorns. We walk in the backyard. We got our little brown lunches. We sit next to each other. I can't stop hugging him. And I'm going to tell you what I saw. I looked up and I saw every dad sitting next to their kid. Like, I went, oh my God, that was me. I had a BlackBerry and an iPhone at that time. That day, my phone was in my wife's car. I had to go through this to understand basic lessons in life, that this is my son's lunch, not mine. And I have no anger, no animosity, nothing towards those dads. That was me. I was the same person. But I was getting this new vision. And we go back, and I'm talking to Larry, my cancer partner. I'm going, this is amazing. I'm going to beat this thing, and I'm never going to go back to old ways. And as we're having this conversation, the phone rang. And it was the University of Pennsylvania telling him they were going to get him off chemotherapy because it was pointless and he was going to die in the near future. Wow. Cancer didn't care about us. It didn't care about the new feeling of life that we had, the way that we were connecting in a new, profound way. It does what it wants, when it wants.
Yep.
And what started to happen is I started to write more. And I started to write more because for all this optimism I was having, like I said, you're kind of pushing stuff down. So unfortunately, about a year or so later, Larry passed on. And he went to a better place. And I remember going to see him. He weighed 80 pounds, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't do anything. All he could do was flutter his eyelids. And my wife ran out after saying goodbye to him. I sat down with him. I go, I got this, buddy. You don't need to be this any longer. I wasn't sad. I wasn't upset. He died 2 hours later. He was waiting for me to drive out to mining country, Pennsylvania, to do a handoff. He was waiting to say goodbye to his cancer partner. And of course I miss him, but he's always with me. But he showed me those necessities I needed to truly get that inspiration to fight like a warrior. And I will always be thankful for him. And he will always be part of my daily life. But what's interesting is they told me I had a grade 3 astrocytoma. I had an aggressive cancer. I had something that'll probably grow back at some point. I had to go through chemo, radiation, all this other stuff. You're putting your place very quickly. So what I started to do is I started to write more. Oh, Matt, you got to go get chemo today. I never wrote to sat down to write. Something had to hit me. You're going to get a test every 3 months, Matt. Every 3 months, you're going to get a test. We're going to see if it grows back. And I would go get my test. They go, Mr. Newman, nothing there. And I'd be like, don't say it. You know, there's a good chance it's going to come back. I'd be like, you could leave that part out. I don't need that. This is my life. This is the way I'm going to run it. So every time something hit me, I would write. 4 years into it, I told you I was sending these emails out to just my friends and family. I had 20,000 people following my emails.
Wow.
And I started to understand that cancer is like buying a car. You buy a car, you leave the lot, you go, look at that. The car's everywhere. Wrong. Car was always there. You just never noticed it till you had a direct connection to it. And I started to get messages from people who had depression, who were thinking about suicide. It didn't matter. It's the path that we're put on. People want to know they're not alone. They don't want to be inspired by some dude reading on a stage who's reading off his cue cards, or they don't care about that. They want to know that other people have taken on struggles. Other people have taken this on. And my writing, which was simply for me, my cathartic way of dealing with it, was flowing all over the place. So I decided I'd write a book. 100% for myself. So I wrote a book that came out on March 23rd, 2018, almost 3 years ago, called Starting at the Finish Line. And I remember the day it came out, I called my mom in Parsippany, New Jersey. I go, hey, Mom, the book's coming out tonight. This is exactly what she said. You know no one's ever going to read it, right? Jerk off. What do they care about me for? She goes, but you're going to put 3 copies in your safe. So when your kids are old enough, they'll be able to read the real story of what actually happened. I said, Mom, I couldn't agree more. And 1 week later, we were number 1 in 4 different categories on Amazon, and my jaw hit the ground. There was no business plan. There was no ghostwriter. I had no idea what I was doing. But what I started to understand is where inspiration and motivation is truly driven from is realness and purity.
Yep.
And if you combine those two together, there's no limit on what you can do for other people. It was a selfless act. I did it for me. I didn't care if it sold a single copy. It meant nothing to me. And what I started to have a better, deeper understanding of was deep-rooted relationships are when you truly connect with people at the heartstrings. And you really find something that you have in common that they don't feel comfortable talking about with most. My catharsis was to get it out. Most people would only talk to me. They had family members that didn't know about the struggles they were taking on. And you start to have a deeper and better understanding of what respect is and the problems that people go through. And I never meant for this to happen. And then I started to do TED Talks. I started to speak all over the world, and everything started to change. But it changed for the reason that people are looking to know it's not just me. There's other people who have taken on challenges. And with great power comes great responsibility. And if there's ways we could help people in any way whatsoever, point them in the right direction, just listen, then it's something that we take unbelievably seriously, and we realize this all happened for a reason.
Wow.
That's so good. I was, it's funny because that whole pushing it down thing,
Yeah.
like I used to think, remember because you've known me long enough to know that I would even say this, that I thought that was I thought it was a strength of mine.
Right.
And it was not. It was obviously not a strength because I'm like, you know me. I'm like, sometimes I'm a ticking time bomb, and like, I learned over time with experience, nothing quite as severe as a brain cancer, but like, just knowing that while in the moment.
Some of those lessons with your son.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Because our
situations that he's talking about, like that, your relationship with him
Yeah.
would not be what it is today.
No way.
if
Not
it
even
wasn't
close.
because of that.
As you're saying that, I'm not going to spoil this for everybody who's listening on this, but I actually understand that. The last part of my book was done. I had to go back and redo the entire end of it. My son went through a really bad thing at a young age, and it involved helicopter crashes.
Yeah.
And so it was just, I've had people call me, like movie producers, go, is this real? And I had them Google it and go, oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what you realize is whatever is happening to me, the minute it happened to him, it was give me the cancer back. Give it to me right now. Just give it to me.
God.
I don't care if I don't make it another week. Don't do it to him.
Yeah.
Don't do that. And you start to have a deeper understanding of how privileged we are to have these moments.
Yeah.
And we take so many of them for granted.
Yep.
And it shouldn't take cancer. It shouldn't take something with your son. It shouldn't take a negative vibe to teach us what is really a basic lesson, which is appreciate the moment and live in the now. And that's something I do everything in my power to never give that gift back, because too many people go through difficult times and it changes. We all know the person who's lost a ton of weight, then 2 years later they gain it all back because things got easy. We know the person that took on a life challenge, all of a sudden things started to work out, they go right back to the way that they were.
Yeah.
And we all have to find these little ways, whether it's notes or whatever. I have my own stuff that I've done on all this. I will never give back what I went through and allow cancer to define me. I define me. Cancer is just riding shotgun. It's something I'll deal with for the rest of my life. But it's my ride. That's just coming along with me anywhere I go.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because like I talked about this. I made a video on this morning, because it's sometimes if you're paying attention, it doesn't have to come through pain. It just comes like last night, the boys fell asleep. I took him to the bed. My 6-year-old, the one that is, miracle baby, because he was 4 when it happened. I'm holding him in my arms. I'm taking him to bed, and he's just draped over me, just like lifeless because he's so asleep. He's passed out, and I'm just like filled with gratitude. And the other one, he's like me when he's asleep. Like, if I don't put him on the bed, he'll like climb onto the nightstand. Yeah, like he doesn't know what's going on.
He has no idea what's going on. Yeah.
And then, and I put him to bed and I walk over to the bedroom. She's already kind of half asleep. I put my hand on her and I start to pray for her. And I'm just so grateful. And all of a sudden, like every good quality about them, every good time that we've spent together flashed before my eyes. And I was like, man, I got to share this with people. So I told people today, just take some time to maybe 5 minutes, sit down, unplug, and think about just maybe your nuclear family, just the people in your house. Yeah. And just think about them and think of what you love most about them. And then think about all the times you spent together. And then, of course, the action step, the final step is, of course, now go spend some time with them, Because if you have to be paying attention, because I think most people, we get so caught up. You got to be intentional. You got to be thinking about it. Because if you don't,
it's so easy just these days. Everything built around us.
It is, but you brought up a point. I agree with you. And that's why I said something earlier, that time is actually an asset.
yeah,
It's an asset that we own. It's ours. We could hand it out the way we want to hand it out.
Yeah.
Utilize it wisely. You shouldn't have to go through this, because unfortunately I've met way, way too many people that have been through similar things that I have, but on a variety of different disease levels that they've taken on, but they realize it when there's nothing they can do with it. So listen to the people that advise you on this, how fragile things can be, and take that asset of time and utilize it the way you want. I understand there's jobs, there's all this other stuff, but there's also that free time. That time you have, the only one who controls that is you. And if you choose not to use it properly, that's on your shoulders right there.
Yeah.
So take the lessons from what others have gone through to do nothing but enhance the way your family, the people that matter to you, look. There's no reason you can't shoot random messages to people. Let them know you're thinking of them. Inspiration and motivation do much more than people realize. It's not from this big speech that we're giving in front of 10,000 people. Sometimes it's from a loved one just shooting you a note going, hey, I hope you're having a good day. I'm thinking of you. What's the downside of doing that? Kindness and gratitude don't get nearly the type of, excitement that they should, because they are truly what hits people in the heartstrings.
It's true. It's true. Wow.
well, now we're gonna bring it back to financial planning. But I guess,
Well, that was amazing. I mean, I feel like whatever needed to be said was exactly what everybody needed to hear. Do you want me to ask the next question?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep going. Because I think this is, well, actually, why don't we go? I'll go to the next one, because this one, I think this perfect segue. Most people nowadays, they're living paycheck to paycheck. They're relying on credit. They don't have a savings. And I understand that people want to live a certain way too. And so we have mortgages. We have 5 to 7 year payment plans on cars, which is just like, I never knew that would exist when I was growing up. And so personally, we're not big fans of credit because of our experience. And I understand the importance of it, but I'm just kind of curious, we may have spent $10,000 in credit in the last 4 to 5 years.
We're not big.
We're not big on it. And it's also because we treat ourselves like little children when it comes to that, because of our experience. And I know it doesn't have to be that way, but I just want to get your thoughts on credit in everyday life. What value does it have, and why should someone have it? I mean, I'm not saying they should, but if they should, why would that be? Because for me, I don't really see the benefit.
Yeah, I think it comes in a variety of different fashions, to be honest with you. I think when you're in a low interest rate environment and credit rates are low, you could leverage money extremely well. You can borrow at a rate where you're almost borrowing it for nothing. And rates have gone up in the last, call it 4 to 5 months. Yeah. But they're still all-time low when you have a 10-year treasury of 1.4% for the most part. What you're using it for is leverage, though. What you're not using it for is to dig a ditch that you can't get out of. Right. There is a massive difference between the two. If you decide that you're going to use a mortgage and you're going to get an unbelievably low interest rate that you could afford left and right, but why pay it up front when you could, leverage your money and make money in the stock market and other areas? It's a great idea. But if you're putting yourself in the position where you're going to struggle just to make your monthly payment, that's on you. That makes no sense. So I actually think debt is an unbelievably useful tool if used the proper way. Unfortunately, most people don't realize till, oh no, I'm stuck. That is not the way to use it. That's what the companies want you to do.
Right.
Exactly.
What you want to do is use it as a tool that you can utilize to say, okay, I can buy a car. I don't really have 50 grand up front right now, but I can afford $250 a month, and that won't impact my lifestyle or my necessities in any way whatsoever. That allows you to have something maybe you wouldn't have had before, especially in the low interest rate environment, to go back to that like I'm mentioning now. But there's a difference between trying to keep up with the Joneses and putting yourself in a position versus using it as a tool to accomplish things in life.
Right.
That's the line that too many people,
they
don't see it.
Yeah.
They one day are on one side of it, and the next day they're on the other because they never saw the line in the sand.
I mean, they don't understand
you have to be honest with yourself to do that.
A lender, a bank doesn't make money off of the interest on your loan. They make money off of taking your house from you, like.
Well, take it from this perspective. Nobody manufactures products, loans, whatever you want to call them, for the betterment of mankind.
Yeah.
They're doing it to make money.
Yeah.
As long as you could do it in a way that benefits you and your family and alleviates burden on you, yes, it completely makes sense.
Yep.
If you're doing it to just dig this ditch that gets bigger and bigger and bigger,
Yeah.
the stress and regret that will build up will outweigh the amount of money that you owe.
And it's always on you. I like, the whole, I don't want to get political, but like, predatory lending, I don't like that term, because a loan is always a mutually agreed upon thing. And, whether it's fine print or not, you should read the fine print, even if it's very fine, you should read it, buyer beware. So
Totally agree.
Yeah. So let's go.
Yeah. No, I'm actually.
Yeah, because this is where we're getting to my favorite part.
No,
I kind of
know,
mentioned this to him.
Right. So one of the things that we're committed to is spending most of our money locally. We really want to support local farmers and stuff like that. Great. We also value food. We get things delivered. We still mostly support small businesses. We also have a plan to purchase, some land maybe within the next 5 years to become more independent, so gardening, growing some food, starting with chickens. What advice would you give to people like us as far as best practices or tax shelters to keep in mind when, thinking of this kind of stuff?
It's a very difficult question to ask because everybody marches to the beat of their own drummer too, right there.
Different states.
Yeah, there's so many different rules and regulations. To give you a perfect example, I'm going to answer this in a very short and concise way. Yeah. I want you to think of the amount of people moving out of the Northeast and out of California right now.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
So if you're the person living in Texas, Tennessee, Florida, your state is being flooded because financially you're in a different tax type. So it's a great question, but there's so much dependent on your personal situation. What's your monthly wage that you bring in? How secure is that? How vulnerable is that to go up and down? Is there going to be, nursing home costs for parents at some point? Do people own their homes outright, or are they underwater on those homes? Is their mortgage something that's, their value is worth substantially less? There's so many different things, but if you look at it, it depends on who you are, where you live. So what I strongly recommend a question like that is seeing a tax attorney, seeing a tax advisor, or seeing a really good financial planner who has access to all that as well too, who can answer that question with in no way selling you anything, but giving you the feedback of what's in your best interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, the consulting.
Versus.
That's exactly right. And by the way, the good ones will do that in 2 seconds. 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Because that's another thing, right? Like picking one. I never know who to.
Well, I usually personally, maybe I'm wrong, but I tend to like look for people who are offering their expertise. Right. I want expertise. I don't the product side of it, of course, but if someone's selling products, it's like me. I used to sell medical devices and things like that, and I'm a hammer, so everything's a nail. So maybe that's a little too general because No,
I understand what you mean, but it's good to get. Listen, what I would tell you to do, and anybody on here, is talk to 2 people.
Yeah,
see how similar the answers are, and then you decide who you want to work with right there. And it's like a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is. If you're not sure of the answer you're getting, go see another one. The more information you get, the easier it is to make your decision. I just can't give a straight answer on that because there's so many different components that are involved in there. And I don't want anybody to think, well, that guy said that. You can be in a completely different state, different region, different situation. Look at the people who live in cities. They pay city wage tax versus just the state taxes. No, there's so many different moving components right there that I want to make sure people are getting great advice. Yeah,
good call.
That's great.
So this is a great question. Now we kind of talked about this in the beginning, but I'm just kind of curious. You mentioned your mission with children and with the education system. We mentioned that we're going to be rooting for you to create a course because that's once you do it, it's evergreen. We'll
love to do that.
Promote the heck out of it because we're Fat Fueled family and our 5 pillars are nutrition, fitness, education, parenting, and mindset. And the education and the parenting, those things, why we share what we do with our children is because we need people to understand that it's not about the calories and the vitamins and the minerals. It's about principles and how our approach is weaved in, how all of these things are interconnected. So I'm kind of curious with your kids, how do you talk to them about planning? I mean, obviously they've seen what you went through, and they still probably need to be prompted, like, okay, you understand how important that was, right? I did my will, I did my power of attorney. So like, how do you approach it with your kids?
Yeah, I don't think they're old enough for that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think that's something that more happens as you're in high school and going into the real world in college. I think the legal semantics of it is too much. What I do try and teach them is the basics of investing. I show them that every month we put $50 in the S&P 500 for them, and show them that all the money they want to spend on Pokemon and all the other stuff they want to do, like regular kids, and get football jerseys. And, my kids are playing sports every night, playing baseball. Yep. I mean, literally like every night. And try and show them growth, that these are the things, if you learn at a young age. You own Apple now. You own the, Microsoft, these companies, because they like gaming and stuff like that. And I'm talking $50. Yeah. $50, and that over time, you're going to make a lot of money. These are lessons most people learn once they get into the workforce.
So true.
That if you learn that at a young age, it could change everything. And I love doing it. They don't always buy into it. They're little kids, but those seeds will bloom one day. And we're setting that up for them now, just to look. And it's not about the money they make in it. It's the lesson we're teaching them that if we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah,
I love that.
It's delayed gratification. Yeah. It's that marshmallow experiment. That's such a good one. I mean, it's a good one. I asked Desmond, and I think that's Desmond's mindset too. I'm like, would you go for the one, or would you? And I didn't tell him about what happened after, but he was like, yeah, I would wait, because I got, I'd get more. And I'm like, yeah, if you wait for something, you get something better. And he learned that too when he would make his money. And how many years did he go to the dollar store?
Yeah, exactly.
Like 2 years.
And you got to let them make those mistakes. And it's better when they make dollar mistakes. So that's
because as they get older, it gets more expensive.
He kept spending. Yeah, he kept spending.
That's exactly
every
right.
dollar.
But it's the basic thought process on, you can instill things into them that they might not make sense. They will at some point, because they've been given that lesson that sticks with them.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, now he's like, oh, I'm not going to do that.
Now he won't spend money at the dollar store because he knows. It's like, he's like, oh, these toys suck. I'm like, yeah, your brother has to learn now.
Yeah, Dean is all
He'll
about
go
it.
ham on the dollar store.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. I think that's the
this is great. I was so looking forward to this. And anytime, if anybody wants to reach out or whatnot, and I'm going to answer a question from the very beginning now as we finish this up. My website is Matthew, Mattthew.
That was our last question.
S. Newman, Newman.com, MatthewSNewman.com. The only person that calls me Matthew is my mom. We had this discussion, I think, before we went on. You like Matt or Matthew? I'm like,
oh, yes.
We set that up, and when I wrote the book, that's what we put it as on there, because that's my name. But when I say nobody calls me Matthew except my mom, and usually that's when she's not happy with me, and so I'm like, Matthew. I'm like, all right.
That was like my mom. So, my mom would call me by my name, Daniel Alejandro.
Right,
she said Daniel Alejandro.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
Get it.
But here's what I want to make sure everybody knows. On my website, there's all the TED Talks, there's all the speeches. I was on ESPN, all this other kind of stuff. That's not why I'm bringing this up. It has all of our social media on there, and it has direct ways to contact us. So if there's any questions we could answer, if there's any ways we could help, if you want to do it on social media, there's direct emailing on that. I told you, with great power comes great responsibility. I don't have much power, but I have a responsibility to make sure that we're all on a similar path. And if you just need some guidance, or to let someone tell you you're not alone, that's our pleasure to do that. And I'm very thankful for the situation that I'm in right now, and we want to pay it forward selflessly as much as possible.
Wow, that's amazing. We appreciate that. We'll definitely share that with our followers and everybody who's listening. Well, because you listen to this.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Matt. We really appreciate you, man. And this was great.
Thank you for having me.
This was amazing. Yeah, powerful.
Yeah.
And anything comes up, you let me know. But thank you so much. Absolute honor to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you.